What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about video game length and DLC. These are two pretty hot button issues right now with both The Order 1886 and Evolve coming out. Evolve is a game that launched with hundreds of dollars in day one DLC, and The Order 1886 is a single player only game that is 5 to 8 hours long that is a full $60. So a lot of gamers are not happy with the current state of both DLC and video game length, and I figured I would talk about that today. So, the first thing I want to talk about is DLC. Now, I've got an opinion on DLC that's probably not typical. I, for the most part, like DLC. I think that usually it's pretty fair, but there are definitely some examples where I do not like the DLC practices. Now, Evolve is a game that I, for the most part, like, but I don't like Day 1 DLC. Day 1 DLC is the only thing I find completely unacceptable. Unless your game is like free to play or it's done tastefully, which I can't even think of any examples of Day 1 DLC done tastefully. But if the game comes out and you can buy shit, buy skins immediately, buy level map packs, whatever, immediately, and not in the form of a season pass, I think that's kind of ridiculous because you're kind of just like preying on people's instincts of like, oh, they like the game now, they like it later. I think DLC is perfectly acceptable. Like with what Call of Duty does. They release their first map pack, 3-4 months after the game comes out? I think that's more than fair, because the people that are enjoying the game are looking for something new, and if you've been playing the game for 3 or 4 months straight, then I don't think it's that ridiculous to say, hey, have some more maps if you want to pay $10, whatever. I think Call of Duty, for the most part, does their DLC pretty tastefully. I think you get a pretty good value with that game. I know a lot of people hate on Call of Duty, but in terms of the value you get for the money you spend, I think it's one of the highest value games in terms of, like, you get a pretty fucking good campaign almost always. The multiplayer is usually pretty good, even if you hate it. And the zombies, people like that. So I think it's a pretty good value, even if you're a hater. I think you can still see the value in that. So Call of Duty does it pretty tastefully. I don't like that they started selling the skins, but they don't sell the skins day one, so I can live with that. BioShock Infinite, another good example. The Last of Us with The Last of Us shows off why DLC is good for the most part. Yes, people complain about DLC. They're like, oh, they cut it out of the game. I don't think that's always true. I think in a lot of cases, DLC allows for the developers, if the game is popular, to add things onto the game that they either couldn't get to or they had to cut out for time constraints. So a perfect example of this was The Last of Us, where I think The Last of Us DLC came out like 7 or 8 months after. Maybe my timetable is fucked up, but that Last of Us DLC for the Ellie campaign or whatever, that came out like 7 or 8 months after The Last of Us. So they legitimately were developing that. And I think that's a perfect example of DLC done right, because I bought that and I had a lot of fun playing it, and I like that. The only non-day one DLC that I really thought was ridiculous in a game that I've played was a game called Asura's Wrath, where you had to pay for the ending of the game. The actual ending of the game costed like $10 or something. I mean, if you play through the game, the normal game, you saw the ending, but it was like a cliffhanger kind of bullshit ending. And then I don't know if it was day one. I don't think it was day one, so it wasn't like the worst thing ever, but a few months later, the actual ending came out, but you had to pay for it. So that's the only time I've had a bad experience with DLC that wasn't day one. And I enjoyed that game, so I can kind of let that one slide. In terms of pre-order bonuses, I'm not against a pre-order bonus as long as it's timed. Like with Call of Duty, they did like the Nuketown bonus map for Black Ops 2, and it was like a month. Like, so anybody that pre-ordered the game could play the Nuketown map for a month, and then everybody got it a month later. I can live with that. But the thing I really hate more than anything are the pre-order exclusive bonuses where it's like, pre-order it with Gears of War 3. Maybe it was Gears of War 3, where if you pre-ordered from Best Buy, you got an exclusive character, and if you pre-ordered from GameStop, you got a different exclusive character, so you couldn't get all of the fucking characters. It would be one thing if those characters were timed exclusives, and if you pre-ordered the game, you got 3 exclusive characters for a month, and then everybody else got them. I wouldn't care about that, because I understand they want they want people to pre-order the game. I completely understand that, but giving permanent things that you can't get anymore, I hate that. Like, I could just... Like, I would fucking hate it if I was a huge Gears of War fan and I wanted to get all the characters, but I couldn't because I didn't pre-order from fucking Best Buy. That's the shit that is, like, unacceptable to me. So, DLC, for the most part, I can live with it. Now to talk about game length. And I'm not somebody that's a huge game length snob, but even I have to admit that the Order 1886 looks pretty sparse. It's a $60 game that is single player only, no multiplayer at all, and it lasts 5 to 8 hours. That is pretty insane. The only game that I can think of that is comparable to the Order 1886 in terms of gameplay and length, and I think it even has an advantage, is Asura's Wrath. Asura's Wrath was longer than 5 to 8 hours. It was probably about 7 hours, if I remember correctly. And that game was pretty much identical to the Order 1886 in terms of the game was mostly cinematics and QuickTime events, had very little actual gameplay, but I enjoyed that game. And, you know, the thing about that game is it wasn't a full-price game. I think it was $40 brand new, and by the time I got it, it was like $20. And there's really nothing I can think of that is that short of a game. 5 to 8 hours for single player only nowadays, that is really pushing it. So, you know, I'm not against short games. I enjoyed God of War. I enjoyed the South Park game. I enjoy the Uncharted games. I guess those are more on the longer end. But I'm not against short games, but that's pushing it. So, yeah, I think everybody would like to see a game have as much value as like a Skyrim or a Final Fantasy. I think Final Fantasy, I like those games. Those are heavy cinematic games, and those go for what, 60 hour? Final Fantasy 13, if I remember correctly, that was a long game, and that was a really cinematic. I enjoyed the fuck out of that game, and it was way longer than 5 hours. So, you know, I don't know what to say about that. That's pretty insane. So I would expect a lot of people are probably going to rent the Order 1886 or just skip it. We'll see. Man, shit. That's really short for a $60 game. But anyway, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys next time.